Hey there, growth seekers. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Growing Forward podcast, where we talk all about personal growth, fulfillment, and unlocking your true potential. I'm your host, Jonathan.
And I'm Janelle. We're so excited to have you with us today. This podcast is all about helping you take those small but meaningful steps toward becoming the best version of yourself.
If this episode resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
It's great to be back.
So today we're going to be looking at something I think everybody struggles with at some point in their lives.
Absolutely.
And that is making mistakes. When it's going to talk about making mistakes, we're going to talk about how to turn those mistakes into opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. Failing forward.
Failing forward. That's what we're talking about.
That's it. And we've got 3 amazing sources to help guide us today.
Ooh, lame on me.
We've got leadership expert Melissa Stefani Ballin.
Okay.
We've got Johnny Holland, who is a learning guru. And we've got life coach Carol Yadava.
3 different perspectives.
3 very different perspectives.
Yeah.
But they all have some really fascinating insights into this whole idea of failing forward. Yeah, it's interesting because you think with all the pressure to be perfect out there these days, then our sources would be all about, avoiding mistakes at all costs.
Right.
But they're not. They actually embrace them.
Yeah.
All 3 of them agree that mistakes are just part of being human.
But Johnny Holland goes so far as to call mistakes an art form.
What?
He says that some of history's biggest breakthroughs came about because somebody was brave enough to get things wrong. Makes you think about all those happy accidents.
Right.
Like the invention of penicillin or chocolate chip cookies.
It's a good one. Have you ever mastered a skill?
Oh, yeah.
Anything from playing an instrument to coding a website without making a single mistake?
No.
Remember
my sourdough bread sawed up so many doorstops disguised as loaves in the beginning.
Oh, I bet those were some dense lows.
They were, but each one, even the ones that could double as bricks, taught me something new.
Exactly, and that's what Holland is getting at with his 5-step process for turning those oops moments into learning experiences.
Yeah.
But before we get into that,
Yes.
I think it's important to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
The fear of failure.
All of the fear.
That so many of us struggle with.
Yes, and Carol Yadava really hits home with this.
Yeah.
She talks about how fear of making mistakes can actually trap us in this cycle of self-doubt.
Oh, yeah?
That causes us to miss out on amazing opportunities and stunt our own growth.
Absolutely.
She even opens up about her own perfectionism and how it held her back for years.
It's so easy to get caught in that perfectionism trap.
It is.
But Yadava makes a really powerful point.
Okay.
Admitting our mistakes, even when it's uncomfortable, can be incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
She shares this really relatable story about having to apologize to her 5-year-old daughter after overpromising on a weekend activity.
It's such a simple example.
It is.
But it really highlights how owning up to our mistakes, even to our kids, can be humbling yet empowering at the same time.
Totally.
Because it shows them that it's okay to mess up sometimes as long as we learn from it.
Absolutely.
And that ties in with what Stefani Ballin calls normalizing failure in a keen setting.
Okay, so what does that look like?
So imagine a workplace where people feel safe to experiment, to take risks, to admit when they mess up without fear of being judged.
Okay.
She argues that this kind of environment is where true innovation thrives.
I can see that.
Because if everyone's terrified of making a mistake,
right,
they're going to stick with what's safe and familiar. And it's not how groundbreaking ideas are born.
Makes sense.
She even has this really cool concept called the insight to impact loop.
Oh, okay. What's that?
So instead of getting stuck in that, oh no, I messed up loop,
she encourages leaders to shift into immediate action mode after a failure.
Okay.
So think of it like this. You hit a snag. You take a moment to understand what happened and why.
Okay.
And then you immediately use that insight to change course.
Got it.
You turn that mistake into fuel to propel you forward.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like turning those oops moments into mini experiments.
Mini experiments. I love that.
So each mistake becomes a data point. A piece of feedback that helps you course correct and refine your approach.
That's a great way to look at it.
So instead of seeing failure as a dead end,
right,
we're reframing it as this valuable detour. A chance to gather insights and make adjustments that ultimately lead us closer to our goals.
I'm liking this already.
Right.
Yeah. And this brings us back to compassion, which is the theme that runs through all three of our sources.
Yeah.
Holland actually dedicates a whole section of his article
Wow.
to the power of being kind to ourselves when we mess up.
It's so easy to fall into that spiral of self-criticism.
Always.
But all three of our experts agree. Beating ourselves up is counterproductive.
It's not helpful at all.
No, it's not.
So instead of asking ourselves, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
We need to shift our focus to, okay, what can I learn from this?
Right. And that's where Holland's 5-step process for turning mistakes into learning experiences
Yes.
really shines. The first step, as we've touched on, is acknowledging the mistake
Okay.
without the self-flagellation.
Got it.
Then he says it's time to ask those hard questions.
Okay.
What went wrong?
Uh-huh.
Why did it happen?
Okay.
What could I have done differently?
And Stefanie Baldwin echoes this in her Insight to Impact loop.
Does she?
Yeah. She suggests bringing your team together after a project goes off track
Uh-huh.
to debrief, not to play the blame game,
Okay.
but to collectively analyze what happened, why it happened, and how you can avoid making the same mistake again.
So it's about turning that post-mortem
Yeah.
into a learning opportunity. Chance to extract valuable insights that can inform future decisions and actions.
But both individually and as a team.
Right.
Which having a growth mindset meeting.
Okay.
Right? Where everyone comes together to share their perspectives, learn from each other's experiences, and figure out how to move forward more effectively.
I love that.
And Yadava adds another layer to this. She talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people who can offer encouragement, constructive feedback, and remind you that it's okay to stumble as long as you're learning and growing.
It's like having your own personal cheer squad.
Yes, to help you dust yourself off and get back in the game.
Especially when those self-doubt gremlins start whispering in your ear.
Exactly.
And she also makes a great point about celebrating your wins no matter how small.
Oh, that's important.
It is.
I love that it's like giving yourself a high five. For every hurdle you clear, every challenge you overcome,
Yeah.
it's a way of acknowledging your efforts and reminding yourself that you are capable of growth and progress.
So we've explored the importance of embracing mistakes, the benefits of adopting a growth mindset, and the power of surrounding ourselves with a supportive community.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what are some practical strategies
Okay.
our listeners can use to start implementing these ideas in their own lives?
Great question. All three sources offer some really tangible tips that we can start using today.
Like what?
For example, Holland suggests keeping a journal
Okay.
where you can document your mistakes, analyze what went wrong, and brainstorm what you could do differently next time.
So like creating your own personal mistake database.
Yes.
That you can learn from.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. The simple notebook where you can jot down your thoughts and reflections.
Gotcha.
Stefanie Baldwin has a similar suggestion. But on a team level,
Okay.
she recommends regular debriefing sessions where everyone can openly discuss what went well, what didn't go so well, and what they learned from the experience.
Yeah, creating that safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their mistakes without fear of judgment is so important.
It is, and it's not about pointing fingers or assigning blame.
Right.
It's about coming together to figure out how to improve as a team.
So it's about fostering that culture of collective learning and growth that Stefanie Baldwin talks about, a culture where mistakes are seen as opportunities for improvement rather than something to be ashamed of.
And Yadava adds another interesting dimension to this.
Okay.
She emphasizes the importance of seeking feedback from others,
Yeah.
particularly those who are supportive and encouraging.
Right, because sometimes we get so caught up in our own heads that we miss obvious things.
Yes, and getting an outside perspective, especially from someone who wants to see us succeed, to be incredibly valuable.
Totally. And it's not just about passively receiving feedback. It's about actively seeking it out
Yeah,
and being open to hearing what others have to say, even if it's not always easy to hear.
it's true. Feedback is a gift,
It is.
even if it comes wrapped in this slightly prickly package.
Right. It's an opportunity to learn, grow, and refine our approach.
So we've got journaling team debriefs and seeking feedback. What other practical strategies can our listeners explore?
Well, Stefanie Baldwin highlights the importance of taking immediate action post-failure.
That
She argues that the best way to turn a mistake into a learning experience is to not dwell on it,
right.
but to use it as a springboard for action.
So it's about channeling that energy, that feeling of, okay, I messed up, into something productive.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out, the next right step and taking it, even if it's a small one.
Exactly. And this ties in nicely with Holland's emphasis on putting the lessons into practice.
Okay.
It's not enough to just think about what we've learned. We have to actually apply those insights in our daily lives.
So it's about turning knowledge into action. It's about embracing the experimental mindset and being willing to iterate and adapt as we go.
And this is where Yadava's advice about celebrating wins, big or small, comes back into play.
Oh, yeah.
It's so important to acknowledge our progress, even those tiny steps forward.
Okay.
Because those small victories can fuel our motivation and give us the momentum to keep going, especially when things get tough.
You are giving yourselves a pat on the back for every effort we make, for every obstacle we overcome.
Exactly.
It's a way of acknowledging our resilience and reminding ourselves that we're on the right track, even if the path isn't always perfectly smooth.
And remember, changing our mindset about mistakes, learning to fail forward, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. That takes time.
It does. We're all going to make mistakes, probably more than we'd like to admit.
Sure.
But the key is to not let those mistakes define us.
Right. It's about learning from them and growing from them.
Yeah. Instead, we can choose to see them as opportunities for growth, for learning, and for becoming more resilient and adaptable.
It's about embracing the journey with all its twists and turns and knowing that every so-called failure is simply a stepping stone on the path to becoming the best versions of ourselves. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today, from why mistakes were inevitable to some really practical strategies for turning those oops moments into valuable learning experiences.
Yeah, we've really dug deep.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways from all of this is that failing forward isn't about being perfect.
Right. It's not never making a mistake.
It's about recognizing that mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
And if how we choose to respond to those mistakes, that makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Our 3 sources have given us some great tools and techniques to help us change the way we think about mistakes.
Like Stefani Boland's Insight to Impact with Holland's 5-step process and Yadava's emphasis on self-compassion and celebrating those wins.
Yeah, we've got a whole toolkit now for navigating those inevitable stumbles.
And turning them into stepping stones on our path to growth.
And I think it's really cool how Yadava shared her own experience of struggling with perfection and realizing that fear of making mistakes was actually holding her back.
It was keeping her from reaching her full potential.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It kept her from taking risks, trying new things, and ultimately becoming the best version of herself.
And it's a good reminder for all of us.
It is.
When we let fear make our choices for us, we end up playing it safe and staying inside that comfort zone and missing out on all the great things that could happen.
Yeah.
If we just allowed ourselves to make a few mistakes.
Right. It's like that Thomas Edison quote.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't failed yet. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. It's about embracing that experimentation, learning from those so-called failures, and using them as fuel to propel us forward.
So I talked a lot about the theory of failing forward. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with this.
Oh, sure.
Have you had any moments where you were able to turn a mistake into a positive learning experience?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in my career was being afraid to speak up in meetings.
Oh, wow.
I would hesitate to share my ideas because I was worried that they weren't good enough or I'd sound foolish.
I think we can all relate to that feeling of imposter syndrome.
Right.
That fear of not being taken seriously or making a mistake in front of other people.
Exactly. And it took me a while to realize that by not speaking up, I was doing myself and my team a disservice.
How so?
Well, I was missing out on opportunities to contribute, to learn from others, and help shape projects.
So how did you overcome that fear?
It is a process.
Yeah.
But I started by making myself share my thoughts, even if they weren't fully formed.
It's about taking those baby steps outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. And to my surprise, people were really receptive to my ideas.
Oh, wow.
They appreciated my perspective, even if they didn't always agree with me.
That's a good reminder that sometimes the biggest obstacle is our own fear of failure.
It really is.
And when we share our thoughts and ideas, it opens us up to all kinds of possibilities.
Totally. And once I started seeing those speaking up moments as practice and a chance to get feedback, it became less about being right or wrong.
Okay.
And more about just contributing.
It's about shifting from that fear-based mindset to a growth-based mindset.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Ooh, I like a challenge.
What do you have in mind?
I want our listeners to think of one small thing they can do today to embrace mistakes
Okay.
and start failing forward.
It could be something as simple as admitting to a recent mistake without beating yourself up.
Yeah.
Maybe trying a new approach to a problem you've been wrestling with.
Uh-huh.
Or even sharing an idea that you've been holding back on.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything huge.
Just a little step.
One small act of courage to start shifting your mindset and embracing the power of failing forward.
Because it's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about using them as fuel to grow, to be creative, and to become the best versions of ourselves.
So go out there, embrace the journey, and remember that every mistake is an opportunity in disguise.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.